You know that recently the Air Force actually put up a video of your helicopter?
What did they?
They did.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it is. It's not very long and it's not very informational.
Is it showing it sitting in Dayton?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked like it was there. They noted that it had been used in CIA covert operations, but they didn't really go into it much more than that.
Okay.
So,
Are we recording now?
yes,
Okay.
yes, we're live.
Okay.
As though you've never told me anything. Start from either the beginning that you've been told or the beginning that you remember. Either way, give me kind of an overview of how your life started.
Oh my goodness.
Just
how
to
many,
give some
how many days?
context.
How many days do you have?
Just context.
So you want to go back to where I was born, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Oh
Let's
my
hear it.
goodness. I was born in 27 July 1934 in Devils Lake, North Dakota. A farm boy. Grew up on a wheat farm, North Dakota. That's all I knew. Where do we go from there? Went to grade school in Starkweather, North Dakota, which was about 7.5 miles away. Then attended high school in Devils Lake, North Dakota. That'd be 48 to 52. Then attended North Dakota Agricultural College, was what called then, from 52 to 56. Giving you just a quick sketch here. And then I I had a short time at Douglas Aircraft from July of 56 to December really, with Douglas Aircraft. It was an interesting assignment there. Then I entered the Air Force at San Antonio, and then I started primary pilot training at Marana Air Base, which is about 40 miles north of Tucson, that base is no longer there.
Okay.
And then in mid-July, I went to basic training in Enid, Oklahoma, Advanced Air Force Base. Got my wings in December of 57.
Gosh.
Okay. And then I took a month and spent at Enid en route to my helicopter assignment at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. And I learned to fly the H-13, the H-19, and the H-21. Took a month in each. Spent another month after that, the month of May, in Reno at State Air Force Base, mountain flying. Flying helicopters in mountains can be a little tricky. And then took some time en route, and another buddy and I and his wife and my wife drove to Alaska for an assignment, Fairbanks, Alaska.
Drove there.
We drove there, Ladd Air Force Base, and spent almost 3 years there. One day I happened to see a sign that said Education Building. I said, wow, I'll go in there. And he gave me forms, fill out some of these forms. I filled out forms. And that was probably, could be December, January, somewhere of 61. Well, within a short time, I get a call from Colonel Wright Patterson, Air Force Base. Said, we got this program in operations research at Case Institute of Technology. Are you interested? I said, can I have 24 hours to think about it? Well, I knew my answer would be yes, but I just stalled anyway. He said, yeah. He said, I'll call you again tomorrow morning at the same time. And he did. I said, yes, I'm ready. He said, okay. He says, I've got orders cut for you to come here, but nobody else knows about it. If you get any other orders, just reject those. You're coming here. Yes, sir. So that's how I got into graduate school. There were about 18 of us, anywhere from lieutenant colonels down to, I think, a lieutenant. in there, and hardly any of us were ready for that tough curriculum. It was difficult. So much so that after the first year, they saw that it was a no-go for most of us. Maybe the exception of one or two. And so the Air Force, to save face, they decided, well, they'd keep me another year and send me to a sister school, Western Reserve, and get a degree in statistics, which happened, which was a wonderful thing. And I got assignment then from Cleveland, Ohio, to Washington, D.C. Headquarters Command. So I arrived there in August, I guess, time for the kids to go to school, approximately. So I spent from September there of '63 till it's a little complicated because I stayed at the place we had bought. I should back up a little. We bought a place, a brand new house between Andrews Air Force Base and Bowling, which worked out quite well because I would fly out of Bowling, but I worked out of Andrews. Okay, if you're a pilot, you got to fly at least once a month and get about 4 hours, see, for currency's sake. So you always have to do that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And then this Gulf of Tonkin thing, which was all fabricated, popped up. And LBJ took the bit, just off he went with it.
For those
plunged us into war.
Yeah, for those that don't know, rewind a little bit there and just kind of maybe say a little bit more about that.
Well, it was contrived. When JFK was assassinated, he was fixing to back out of that mess. And everybody knew it. I could talk for 2 hours on the JFK assassination.
Just that, I know.
You know all about that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so LBJ, he a very wicked person, exceedingly wicked, power mad. I'll back up a little bit. When I was looking for a house there in Maryland, I stumbled upon a realtor. His name was Berlin, of all things. I said, man, I'm just down here for a couple of days. I got to get a house. I'm living up to Cleveland. I'm moving down here shortly, and I don't have a lot of time to spend to get a house. So we're traipsing around in that vicinity between Andrews and Bowling. Couldn't find much of anything. And then out on a road, he said, well, here's a couple of brand new houses up here. Whoa. Well, it was sort of a busy country road, but it's the only thing that was available. So I bought it. We got that. But in the meantime, when we're looking around for houses, we're talking about politics. And I'll never forget, he says, LBJ, we don't want him to ever be president. He's terrible. At that time, I was a little naive about things. He just made an imprint in my mind. This guy should never be president. Well, it happened. So then, next thing you know, in about '65, I'm working at my job at Headquarters Command, which I was totally unsuited for. The Air Force, in their great wisdom, sent me there.
Why did you think that?
I had a degree in statistics. Didn't have to do this statistics. We got there. We had PCAM equipment. You know PCAM, punch card accounting machines. That's what we had when I got there.
Oh my.
Then he got into COBOL.
Oh boy.
I wasn't a programmer. I wasn't into computer stuff. Just complete malassignment. So I think back to the cockpit. And it could take the first this year, next year, or the following year, or something like that. It had choices when to go in. I just picked the middle ground. I'll take the second year, which turned out to be then somewhere in '66. Well, it was quite convenient because I was going to go back to cockpit. I knew it'd be helicopters. That's what I was qualified for. But the Headquarters Air Force had their VIP squadron right there on Bowling Air Force Base. So I went down there. I said, hey, I'm going back to cockpit. You mind if I join you? Sure, come on in. So I flew the red, white, and blue helicopters, VIP helicopters, for about a year out of bowling.
Go figure.
Gosh. It was just sort of a milk run between bowling and Andrews and in the Pentagon, in and out. You do that, you can do it almost in your sleep.
So, rewind. You got into the Air Force for what reason?
All right. You have to go back to World War II, which I called a 7-11 war. It was 7 when I started, 11 when it ended. But we kids followed the war very closely. And one thing I followed was the airplanes. We had the P-38 Lightning. That's pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah.
The P-40, which the Flying Tigers used, and other assorted things, you know. And so I had cards. I had a deck of cards. They may be in my desk here of those things.
Like little baseball trading cards,
Like
kind of
baseball
just
trading
like that.
cards,
Yeah. Yeah.
It had a picture on the outside, a beautiful color picture, and then on the back side it was a short description of the aircraft. So I had all that. So I was, coming out of World War II, I was really kind of interested in airplanes. And then shortly, either during the war or shortly after that, I got my good buddy to go down to Devil's Lake, and I got a short ride, just a little ride. I sat in his lap. It's a 2-seater. Pilot in front, he was there, and I sat in his lap, put strap on. It was probably a 10-minute ride around the countryside.
First time in an airplane.
First time, yeah. I thought this was great. So I always had it in the back of my mind, I'd kind of like to fly. So in 1952, I went to college. As I said before, North Dakota Agriculture College at that time. And naturally, I would join the Air Force ROTC. I think it was mandatory, as a matter of fact, the first 2 years for everybody.
Interesting.
Air Force ROTC or Army or whatever else there.
Right.
You had to take 2 years mandatory ROTC, as I remember. I chose Air Force, of course. Well, the Korean War broke out in '50, and we didn't know if and when that thing was going to end. And they were fixing to start draft some people on that thing, and I didn't want to get involved in that. If I stayed in college, I would not have to worry about being drafted in the Korean War. As it was, it simmered down. It wasn't an issue, but you don't know it at the time.
Right.
So then when the third year came along, you have to decide if you're going to stay with it or you just quit ROTC and go back to being civilian. No, I stayed with that thing. So they start paying you then. When you're a junior, they start paying you a nominal amount. Get a little paycheck, you know. Yeah.
But it's something.
Something like that. And it happened in must have been my senior year. I don't know if all of us, which would have been in that class, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, whatever it was. There was a test that I don't know if it was voluntary, if they all took it. My mind is vague on that. But I took that. It was the craziest test I've ever taken. I don't even know what they're talking about, these things. So the best I would do, I'd see a question, I'd go down, I'd say, I wonder which answer looked like would be the best one. It was multiple choice. I did a good job.
Do you remember what type of questions they were?
I just remember there were things I'd never heard of.
Okay.
I had never heard of.
But math, science, I mean,
It just bounced all over the place. And I just read it, and I just, what do I do? But I like 3 or 4 multiple choice, I'd say, well, that one probably fit that thing better. Well, as it was, I was one of 6 of us had distinguished Air Force ROTC graduates based upon that test.
Oh my goodness.
Which I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh no.
So it didn't make any difference to me if I distinguished or not. I just wanted to go fly. So I just sort of flaked that off. It's not important. It's not important. So, yeah, we got in there, graduated. Well, we see in spring of '56. So I was trying to see the word. I think I was graduated, and then a few days later I was commissioner, vice versa. Then a few days later I was married. All three things within a space of about less than 3 weeks.
Oof.
Bing, 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 bing.
Oof. Oof.
The whole life changed right there.
Mm.
So,
My goodness.
yeah. So that's how I got into the Air Force. Never regretted it. I would have, going from one place to another, I pretty much had my choice, but choice was determined by class standing, and you get evaluated on your aviation skills, you get evaluated on your ground skills, and maybe another factor now I can't remember. And I was above average somewhere all the time. So I always, when it came to an assignment, I always got my pick. It was handy. So I got down there at Lackland Air Force Base, and that's December of '56. And I got on board. Here's some of the choices, and I had just driven through Marana from the West Coast, past Tucson, over to Lackland at San Antonio. And I remember driving by. I said, "That's kind of a nice place. Got these big swirl things. Oh my!"
Mhm.
And Marana was on there. I said, I'm going there at Marana. So I went back to Marana. I really was glad I went back to Marana. Yeah, it was big out in the desert. You know,
Yeah.
lived in Tucson. Yeah.
And that had to be such a foreign thing coming from North Dakota.
Well, you
Goodness.
just, I think I was relatively adaptable.
Right. Well, you must have been.
I was relatively adaptable. It did, you know. And so that was some good years. We were, we had two squadrons there. One was the Demons, and we were the Polecats. And I never did keep my old Polecat. It's, you know, black and white.
Yeah.
It lost. I wish I'd kept it. I was Polecat 3-8.
Oh, that's
Polecat 3-8 in Marana. I was in primary, called primary training.
okay. So you mentioned that you kind of had some ideas as to what Korea was, and you weren't really interested in.
I didn't want to go to Korea. No.
Well, yeah, but exactly. You didn't want to be there.
No.
But you end up in Vietnam.
Well, see, that's
So what changed?
Nothing. LBJ changed all that.
Right. But how did you feel about it before you went?
Well, I'll sum it up this way. When we ate at lunch there in bowling, we had a lot of airmen in there, officers. We sort of mixed together for lunch. And I remember an airman came up to me as I walked down the hall. He said, "Captain Erikstead, yeah, what do you think about this war?" And I just gave kind of a snotty reply. I said, "Either do it right or don't do it at all." That's what I told him. I was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He kind of looked at me and walked away. Okay.
Gosh. Oh my goodness.
So where are we going after this? You're I don't know.
So obviously, you hear stories, and I'm sure you got to see some of it. People came back from Vietnam and had people spitting on them on the tarmac. Did you experience any of that hostility? Or
No, I didn't have any firsthand experience of stuff like that. I was spared that.
Did you ever purposefully remove yourself or just avoid a situation knowing that there might have been something like that? Did you have to conscientiously avoid that, or it just never happened that way?
You mean when I was over there? Or
no, when you came back.
When I came, no, I didn't know. No,
So whatever it wasn't widespread enough.
Well, it just never affected me where I lived. Never affected me where I lived. No.
So you go to Vietnam, and how soon after that did you kind of get pulled into the CIA stuff?
Well, okay. Of course, I go down the street. I'm flying the red, white, and blue VIP helicopters out of Bowling, okay?
Right.
And so finally, it was late '66, I think it was. I got orders. I knew I'd be in a helicopter someplace. I got orders, and I showed them to a major there. I said, "Here's what I got." He says, "The only said to me, you'll like it." That's all he ever said to me. He says, "You will like the assignment." I thought, "Whew, that's good. That's good news. Someone's looking after me." Yeah.
You say it as though he had something to do.
Well, he
with
knew.
getting it
He
to
knew
you.
what the assignment
Exactly
was.
what it was.
But that's all he could dare to say. It was so secret. He knew all. I don't know if he'd been there, or if he had a good friend who'd been there, but he knew what the assignment was. But that's all he would say to me.
So what was that first one?
First one.
What was the first assignment that he was telling you about?
Well, this is an assignment to Vietnam.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So before I can get over there, I've got to go through counterinsurgency school up in Northwest Washington for a couple of weeks, something like that. In the snow, escape and evade. And I got to go through jungle survival school over there north of Manila, which is, it's survival schools. They try to simulate these things, all right.
They beat you up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And then flew into Tan Son Nhut, which middle of the night there was all kinds of activity going on. I got out of there as fast as I could. Flew up to Da Nang. I finally got to Nha Trang, which was our home base. So we were assigned to Vietnam. This unit was assigned to Vietnam.
Right.
So you had to process through Vietnam, but you didn't do any flying in Vietnam.
Right.
So when I got up, finally got processed, I got on a plane and flew into Thailand, to Udon, Thailand. That would be my home for the next year, Udon, Thailand. And I got there and found out where to report to the squadron there, and got there. Here you are. And no welcoming committee at all. People just doing things like this and that. And nobody's telling you anything. Nobody's telling you what. You look out there and you see the helicopters out there. They're all camouflage. Then you see a black one sitting out there. Nobody's telling you anything about this stuff. So in a few days, I see my name up on the board. Going to go flying with so and so the next day. Okay. So I jump in the helicopter with this guy I've never seen before, who's an old head, and off we go. And just co-pilot, flying along, and he's running the mission. And I start to see what's going on. That's the way you learned it. You learned the whole thing by osmosis. Nobody ever sat down and briefed you on what you were going to do. Nobody. Briefing. You just learned by being with other pilots on missions and seeing how we do things. It was okay.
Huh.
It was okay. Yeah.
How long after that would you say was the first mission where you thought, this is legitimately dangerous?
Well,
to your own personal safety.
There are levels of danger.
Right.
If you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 is the greatest danger, we were probably at a 1.
Ever, in your entire time there?
Well, no, there were periods when it was a little different.
Okay.
But we flew unarmed helicopters. They were light as could be, had big heavy engines. You could manipulate, and our object was to get into some place secretly to get out. So there wasn't supposed to be anybody shooting at you when you did that.
Right.
And for the most part, that was true.
And you just had, I recall you saying at some point that there was equipment on board that at that point was classified or whatever.
On our machine, no.
Not too much.
No,
okay, no.
no.
But the Black Mariah was specifically
Well,
built to do that job.
No, the Black Mariah didn't have any extra equipment either. There's some fables out there. The story, as I understand the Black Mariah, is that was over at NKP, which was on the Mekong River, which is east of us
Okay.
earlier. And I think some airmen or sergeants just got in their head to paint it black one day. It's pretty strange how it became black. I don't think it was an order out to paint it black. I really don't think there was. And then they thought, I think someone thought, well, you could use it for a night mission, but helicopters at night out there in the jungle,
that ain't it.
that really doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. And so it stayed black.
Right. Because they just didn't want to repaint it?
Well, no, they just left it.
That's
A lot of things in the war zone are really, really strange. It's not like back in the States, like you're flying around a flag, but when you go in a war zone, it's you kind of do as you please. You stay within the boundaries. You don't cross up your superiors and things like that. But everybody knows everything's a lot looser over there, except for things when you count, and that's where it's tight. So, no, and then we would fly it on missions, and then it was getting a name. The good guys and the bad guys were getting a name and blackout. And they said, well, that's something special. Or something. They put a bounty on it.
Really?
Wow.
Gosh.
It was a $50,000 bounty on that thing.
Just for anybody to shoot it out of the sky, essentially?
Yeah.
Gosh.
And we even had to tie people shooting at us. Yeah, well, that wasn't so good.
Was the presence of that base in Thailand also somewhat classified, or was that was a known operating base?
No, we were the clandestine group there. The Air America flew out, not out of the base, but nearby. Air America had a strong presence at Udorn. I knew them. But no, I think F-4s flew out of there. If there are any other clandestine things going out of there, I don't recall of it. There might have been.
So you would classify most of what you did over there, it sounds like more reconnaissance than anything. You were trying to fly in.
Well, a typical mission would be we want a road watch team over by the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Okay.
Fly it in as close as you can to get out. So you pick up some of these short guys, these Lao, and most of them are Hmong, and the Hmong people tend to be Christians of all things, and they're fiercely anti-communist. And they're short. You give them these big guns, you give them the big uniforms, they're just flop all over. And then they had grenades tied around you like this, and they had a big gun. Lord, don't let those grenades go off here in the helicopter. So you'd pick up 4, 6, 8, 10 of those people and fly them in by the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Then they were just supposed to road watch and count the trucks going by down. Things like that.
Huh. Sure.
And there were other assorted missions. I would say that 3/4 of our missions were in conjunction with the CIA. We fragged out for the CIA, just guessing at it. They did a good job. We'd have maps, we'd have information about what the place looked like because we'd never been before. And it was strange territory, and they'd have good maps and good directions, and it was always just like they said it was. Yep, this is it. They were very good at that. The CIA, what they call them, case officers. They never really messed up on us at all. We had some other missions where some people messed up on us, but where it wasn't like it should be.
Was that Air Force people or stuff that was getting relayed from other?
But I can't answer that. I just know that the CIA people on there were doing a good job as far as we were concerned.
Anytime they were involved, it seemed like y'all were pretty
we
on
knew
point.
We knew all the information was good and it was fresh. Sometimes if you're going to an LZ and someplace you've never been before and it's chopped down, 200, 300 foot trees like that, someone's chopped it all down, and you have a funnel you can go down,
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do. I got down on one of those, and it wasn't a CIA mission. We were letting off a bunch of people. Can't remember what for.
Define a bunch. I mean, are we talking 5, 10 people?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 or 10, yeah. And the hole was big enough to descend, but you had maybe about 10 feet all the way around, something like that.
Okay.
So we're going down and down and down. We got down to about 30 feet or something like that. And there all these saplings are growing up from the bottom.
Oh, no.
And saplings will grow maybe a foot a day.
Yep.
And I had a fellow that was he wasn't the most experienced guy that we had, and he was sitting over there. He said, "What are you going to do?" "Well, I'm just going to chop them down. They're just saplings."
With the blades.
With the blades.
Oh my gosh.
So we got down low enough and dumped these people off, which this guy was, duh.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Well, what are you going to do? Yeah.
The rotor blades are tremendously strong.
Yeah.
Tremendously strong. I mean, you don't realize how strong those rotor blades are. They'll chop anything.
Huh.
Yeah, they're not flimsy at all.
Gosh.
I have to digress.
Go for it.
I'm going to tell you how strong those rotor blades are.
Okay.
About a month before we left, the other pilot I was flying with, got real cozy in formation flying with the boss up front. We crossed rotor blades. Well, that's shake, rattle, and roll.
Mm.
I thought it was over. I really thought it was over.
Mm.
And he was hanging on, I was hanging on, and I said, I think the gauges are okay. And it flew, but it was just a rough, wide, shaking us to pieces.
Oh my
But it
gosh.
flew.
That's wild.
And we looked down, and there was a soccer field. This is in Udorn. We said, "We're going in there." I said, "Yeah." He was doing most of the flying, but sometimes I get on there with him because it was just really bad. We sat that thing down in the soccer field. Glad to be on terra firma. And shut the thing down. And as we shut the rotors down, pieces were flying all over the place, just flopping.
Oh.
There's just pieces of it falling over. It finally all came to rest. And we carefully got out, and there were pieces of rotor blade laying all around. We looked up, and there were gaps in every rotor blade of 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot,
Oh my
like
goodness.
that. Maybe more, I don't remember. It was ragged gaps, but it flew down. It flew down.
That is crazy.
So I know those rotor blades are really, really strong.
Oh man.
They're not flimsy at all.
No kidding.
Anyway, I digressed.
No, that's a fun story.
It's not very
Goodness.
fun.
No, that's pretty scary, man.
Well, when it first happened, I thought we'd bought the farm. When it first,
Well, yeah.
I said, wait, this is it. It's all over.
I mean, I'm surprised there
But
weren't.
the other helicopter had the same response as we did. They made it down the same way. They had the same story. Both of us.
Well, yes, you came a razor's edge away from buying farm. That could have.
Well, if any one of the blades had been severely damaged, where most of the panels were gone,
Yeah.
we couldn't have flown.
Well, and I'm just thinking. I mean, the pieces that you're talking about flying off. I mean, those if they fly into the cockpit.
The
I
blade
mean,
is
it's-
built in panels.
Right.
So they're
Right.
built in panels.
Right.
But they're tightly put together. They're well designed.
Apparently so. Goodness. So most of what you were doing was pulling people in and out of zones.
Yeah,
It sounds like.
and other assorted duties. One of the big project we had, the Air Force decided in summer or fall of '67, they're going to put in a navigational facility way up in northern Laos. And if you're at that navigation facility, it's 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet, something like that. And a clear day, you can look down and you can see Hanoi. So
Oh.
it's like that. Okay, on a clear day. So they're going to put in this super navigation facility up there. And we helped supply that thing in the fall of '67. We hauled supplies into that thing, which was a nice little trip. You take off from Udorn, cross the Mekong, go past PDJ. I don't know if you don't know what the PDJ is. It's the plane of jars.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So we go past that. We'd have a little place we hook through, and then we just fly straight north up to that place and drop off our supplies. And that meant we were just hauling supplies
Right.
to this navigational facility. We got it into operation sometime in the fall of '67. It was really useful because the F-105s were using that to navigate in Hanoi, and very, very useful. They called them the thuds, F-105s. And well, then the bad guys knew that it was being useful too.
Right.
So they decided we're going to have to get rid of that. So from that time on, when they saw how useful it was to us, they decided they were going to get rid of that thing.
What all methods did they employ?
A number of methods they tried. There was an old Soviet Antonov, I can't pronounce it, airplane they used, a World War II airplane, tried to come in there and bomb it. They couldn't do it. Actually, one of those was in there trying to bomb it. It was sort of an amateur hour, you know. Well, then one of the Air America helicopters, which was another variation of a Sikorsky, he went up there with a gun out like this, and he shot the thing down.
No.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
that's an Air America guy. He was pretty close by, delivering some other stuff. They said, he just went up there. He's flying the helicopter, shot it down.
And that was it.
That was Air America. That wasn't us.
Oh my gosh. So that makes it sound, and this is actually another question that I had. And obviously, media is almost never to be trusted, but if you watch, any movies or TV shows or whatnot that are kind of centered around the Vietnam War, there's this very consistent theme that there was just chaos over there with guys just doing whatever they want. There's a
Well, you mean in Vietnam?
in Vietnam.
Well,
yeah.
some of that's true.
And to
But-
your
but-
point from
but-
earlier.
But no, and we were controlled. We were in a war zone, but we pretty sloppy in how we dressed. We'd put on a cowboy hat or something like that, and nobody cared. Just so you do your job, see.
So that's not
that-
entirely untrue.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah. But in Vietnam, that was a different thing. Now, I have to say this: there was not much in a newspaper about the war which was going on in Laos.
Right.
And so the American public knew exceedingly little about it
By design.
by design. So the U.S. government didn't talk about it. The Soviet government didn't talk about it. So as a war that was going on that was not talked about by either communist or other side. That's a fact. They didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But it was going on.
Yeah.
I've got a book somewhere called The Shadow War. You can read all about the Shadow War that was going on for all those years. But back to the unit I was in, I realized after I'd been there a few months, this is the way you want to get acclimated. You don't have to have a briefing by somebody. Just go out in the mission, pick it up.
Right.
Next thing you know, you're doing it.
So, of all the things that you did, how much of it were you told you can't talk about this?
We just knew it. We all knew that this was a secret operation.
So you never signed anything. It was just
No.
there's no
I don't remember saying
NDA.
anything. But we knew better. When I came
Yeah.
back from Vietnam, and when I got to LeTourneau,
Right.
people asked me, I said, I can't tell you. We just knew better to open your mouth and start blabbing.
But
We all knew that.
at what point? So I remember, what was it, a decade ago now, that they declassified a bunch of.
Well, the internet came out in '92. When I
Right.
started checking on the internet, I'd see some of this stuff. They were talking about things I'd been there. And as 92, 93, 94 came along, I said, I don't think there's anything classified anymore. They're talking about it. There's books written about it.
But my point,
That's when I started talking about
But
it.
my point is, they never reached out to you and said, one, don't talk about this. Two, okay, now you can talk about it. You just go out there on, the predecessor to Google, and you're finding out, oh, people are talking about this.
As long as it's in public print, what I did,
There's no point in being
there's
secretive
nothing to
about
hide
it.
anymore. There's absolutely nothing to hide anymore. But I did not talk until, so I came there in 69, 79, 89, 20 some years. I never said, they'd ask me, I say, I just hauling men and material. That's all they ever said. That's all they'd ever say. That's all I could say.
That's crazy.
They didn't want to jeopardize the operation.
Well, of course. You just it's just wild to me that you're that with the CIA. I mean, you're operating that close, and they didn't.
CIA didn't. It was up to the Air Force. The CIA did not control internal Air Force business.
Right. But my
So
point
they had
is,
no
I
control
mean,
over
you're
it.
going on missions that have been
Oh, yeah.
pretty much put out there by them, and,
Yeah.
and there was no, hey, you better not
It
talk
was all
about
top,
this.
it was all top secret. All top secret. Those flags came out. They're all top secret. Had to be. All the time. We knew
So,
it.
of everything that you did there, was there a time when you were ordered to go on a mission and you thought, either one, this doesn't feel right, or two, I just have a personal objection? I mean, was that ever a factor?
There was
for
a
you?
mission under MACSOG.
Okay.
That's not CIA.
Okay.
MACSOG, we Major Air Command Special Operations Group.
Okay.
There was a mission that this was sometime in the spring of '68 that a colleague of mine had, and then didn't perform it. I don't know. He came back and didn't do it.
Because
And
of
I don't know
objections, or-
why. I don't
okay.
know why if he did it partially or not. I didn't understand it. But the next day I saw him. I'm on this MACSOG mission, and MACSOG, they are goal oriented. They are not oriented towards secrecy and safety so much. It's just goal oriented. They're all run by officers, majors, colonels, or something like that. And someone's given them a goal to do this, you do the goal or whatever else, something like that. That's the mentality they have. Well, I got there that next day, taking it up for this guy, and I got on a mission. I said, there was a Sandy up there. I said, hey, I'm going back. Okay. So I just went back. Didn't take the mission. Didn't do it. It was just rotten. The problem with that mission was that they had a lot of shooting going on in southern Laos. They want to take some more people in the middle of that shooting and drop them off. And I said, man, we're not armored. We're not suitable for that. It's not a suitable thing for us to do.
So it was personal safety and safety of the crew, and
Safety
that was your
on a helicopter. You get shot down.
right. And
But the MACSOG didn't seem to factor into their equation. So I don't know what happened then after that. I was one where I refused. That's the only time. I came back and I talked to my buddy, Bellotti, who's a major. He was my buddy. And I told him what I'd done. He says, I got your back. It's okay.
so nothing, no talking to, nothing. Just we'll take care of it.
Well, see, I knew Major Bellotti from Alaska. He and I flew together H-21s in Alaska. We were
Okay.
good buddies from out there. He was a grade above me,
Okay.
but he was a nice guy. He was a pretty sharp guy. And I told him, he said, it's okay. You did it? That's okay. So that's one I did turn down. Now, as long as we're talking about that, we had more than enough pilots in our unit. We had overflow. We always had too many pilots, really. So we had types of pilots that were gung-ho, and they were trying to make a hero out of themselves, and they would want to always take the most dangerous thing they could possibly take and so forth. Okay, but we had some like that, a few.
There's always going to be one or two.
But now we had the major, a couple of majors, and the colonel who was in charge. They felt obligated to take the really bad missions. So I never really got on any really bad missions. Because these people wanted them, and I said, that's good enough for me. I'm just putting in my time. That's fine with me. And a matter of fact, Major Bellotti, the ops officer that I knew so well, he went down in southern Laos there in, I think it was December of '67. They got shot all to pieces.
I was gonna say, I thought that was the one you said got shot down.
Well, we didn't get any helicopter shot down.
Or
But they came
yes.
back, and he motioned me the day or two after that. He said, "Come on out, I'll show you something." So we went to the helicopter, and right here behind his head, a round had hit the metal and just bent it all to pieces. Just missed him by an inch or two.
Goodness.
And I said, "Yeah, we were into things we shouldn't have been into." That
I had mentioned Vellotti at a prior time that
well, he's in the book Shadow War.
right.
Vellotti's in that book, Shadow War. Yep. Huh. So, I never, even if CIA mission had some measure of violence to it, those guys would take it anyway. That's good. I just want to put my ear in and get out of here, okay? But most of the people, I'm talking about top rank down the bottom, just got always, I'm just going to keep my nose clean, put in the year and get out of here. That's except a few. Some people want to make a name for themselves.
Okay, so earlier you kind of referenced, you're like, well, the vast majority of what you did on a scale of 1 to 5 was a 1.
Yeah.
What was the time that it got tipped the most in the
Well,
other
there
direction?
were times when things happened that are not supposed to happen. We're coming home from NKP, which is east of Udorn, at night, relatively low level, 4,000 feet or something, I don't know. And that's in country. Look, I said, what's all those red things? Tracers.
No.
So,
oh no.
So the Thai were shooting at us. These are the good guys were shooting at us.
It's just.
Well, there was a helicopter. They heard helicopters was bad. And man. So we learned we'd come home, but after that we fly about 6,000 feet. We'd get away from all those 50 caliber tracers.
Gosh.
There was a lot of them. If you see tracers at about 10 times that minute coming up there at you, that's not a very good idea.
And I would hope that was the only time you had friendly fire. But
no, friendly fire was the most. That was the thing that was worse. Any war, friendly fire is a bad thing.
Oh, of course.
I had a mission down to a TACAN site, Savannah, down the Mekong, down south along the Mekong there. I had taken some supplies. I don't know what it was. Yeah, it's just a milk run really. So we always flew 2 when we were on missions, but this time we were just flying 1 because it wasn't in any serious territory, so it was just one of us. Well, if we're on any missions, always 2 helicopters.
Were you flying close together?
No, just reasonable, just a loose distance.
Within quarter mile?
Well, keep within this. Keep within sight.
Sight, okay.
Sort of a loose situation.
Okay.
And if you're flying 2 of you, generally the front one would be the one that's going to go in and land and do something. The back one was going to just
keep the air clear.
Circulate and all like that. Well, anyway, this was one. We took one flight down there to this TACAN site. It was a TACAN site. It was a piece of cake, And so I found the site and set up. Wind was coming out of the west a little bit. It was a curious thing. Of course, they're probably flying 7,000 feet, maybe 8,000, I don't know what it was. Because the TACAN site set up a ways. But there was a lenticular cloud right on top of that site. You know what a lenticular cloud is?
Do tell.
It's a little cloud that forms above a peak.
Oh, right.
Due to certain weather circumstances.
Yep.
And it was just sort of a flimsy one. But anyway, it was sitting there. And it's right where I want to go through. So I was making a nice approach to the lenticular cloud. It came out and didn't have much time getting out of the lenticular cloud to pick our landing spot. Well, we've been briefed, but this was not a CIA briefing. This was an Air Force briefing. Well, you got to land to the left of the second concertina wire. Okay? First concertina. Land to the left of the second concertina wire. We landed. And a guy came screaming out of shock, ah, you're in a minefield. I thought,
Oh no.
so I lifted the thing up, moved it over.
Oh my gosh.
So the intelligence Air Force was not always as current as the CIA.
Oh,
It's
no.
not a good idea to land the minefield. It's fortunate we just
Oh.
didn't knock anything off.
Oh.
It ruined your whole day.
God.
So that's friendly fire.
Oh my goodness. So that was mines that they had set up
They themselves.
just in case they got attacked
they
by
got-
land.
Yeah, over.
Oh my gosh. That's nuts.
God, these things just happen.
Oh.
There was another friendly fire. We came back from a mission somewhere in South Central Laos or something like that. And they said, divert over to another place over here, such and such. Okay. And we found that place. They said, well, there's some bad guys down there, something like that. Okay. So, okay, I didn't know what we were supposed to do, but they diverted us over there. So we're in a long orbit around this area. And then suddenly they dropped all these flares on us. Flares. They're lighting up this whole area to try to see the bad guys. And we're down below these flares. And you don't want these flares hitting you. They'll burn, they'll catch you on fire. And we just took off and left them. They dropped flares on us. We're out of here, man. I don't care what you say.
Oh my gosh.
All right, about. Oh, shoot. Friendly fire.
Oh man. So friendly fire was the most dangerous thing you encountered.
I don't know.
Gosh.
There might have been some other one. I don't know. We were up on this site, Lima Site 85, I guess it was. That's the one up north. The northern one. I think it was about 2 or 3 miles from the Vietnamese border. But this was a funny one. We hauled some material in there, heavy load. You have to spend maybe half an hour getting to unload all that stuff, you know. You just sort of walk around. So I was walking around here and on, and looking over, and it was down about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, you know. It was quite a karst. And I was kind of peeking around, and I took a step off the trail like this. Clicked right behind me.
Oh gosh.
Well, I knew right away what it was. I came back. It was poppies. You don't step on the poppies.
Oh.
It's income. It's income. They were growing poppies up there, and they were going to get income. That's where you get opium from.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you don't dare to even damage one poppy. That's what I was doing. Boy, it was just one foot. Click, click.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of humorous.
How? I assume you saw the top of a lot of poppy fields while you were in the air.
Not so much.
Not too much.
Not so
Okay.
much, not
They did a better job of hiding them than that.
I'll tell you a different story, though. We did some civic work. You're allowed to, even in those areas, if you can do a day of civic work for the populace, you know,
Right.
keep it
Kind of
keep them-
volunteering stuff.
Yeah, well, if you got a helicopter and you can do it, you do that.
Okay.
So I approached Bilotti one day. I said, the missionary in town, who we got to know quite well, he's got a load of lumber and some other stuff. He wants to go out to western part of Thailand. And do you mind if I set it up? He said, well, go ahead. said, you can have such and such a day. It'll be your helicopter, and tell him that to bring it on and load it and so forth. He was familiar with the base, of course,
Right.
and so he came on and loaded that all up. And so I picked another younger guy, just been there a little while, to be my co-pilot. So you want to go out and see Western? Yeah, sure, I'll go out there. So we get in there and we fly all the way out there. And it was right near the Burma border. Burma border was close. And there was Karen people. And he knew, and the missionary says, I can guide you. I know what it looks like. And so he guided me. He said, yeah, there's a place to land, and we land there. And they offloaded a bunch of things like that. And we got the helicopter empty. And I said, well, we're going to go up and look around the area. It's kind of like a dog. You like to look around the area before you settle down.
Right.
So we got up like that. And I said, let's fly further west. We hadn't flown 10 or 15 miles. That's a rushing wave, river, huge, roaring, just whoosh. Well, I guess it's pretty close to the border. I think it was a Salween. There's the Irrawaddy, and I think it was a Salween River.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's not very interesting. Not good. So we came back to about where the missionary was. He said, well, let's go north. And we hadn't gone 10 minutes north. We looked down, and we were flying maybe 3,000-4,000 feet up. Maybe, not maybe. We got a good description of land. And looked like a small army. They had guns.
Boy.
They had pack animals. That was an opium run.
Oh,
That's what it was.
No.
And you don't mess with those people; they'll shoot you down.
So there,
We
it's
were
essentially
flying.
cartel type.
Well, we were flying almost right at them, and they were looking at us. We were looking at them.
Oh.
Whoa! And they had their guns, and they had all these pack animals loaded, and they were headed south.
Oh
Now,
boy.
the dirty little secret about that stuff. The CIA never had enough money from official sources, so they would generate their own money. This is just common. Probably goes on today. You know how they generated their own money? They got into CIA, the drug traffic, and they could make a lot of extra money to do what they wanted to do.
And I think they're still doing it to a fair
Probably.
extent today.
Probably. So I'm sure that, because they were flying around those same areas we were flying around. Now, I don't know if all the CIA people knew it, but somebody knew it somewhere.
So, you mentioned that you got to be good friends with the missionary there.
Well, yes.
You remember where he was from, out of curiosity?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you. We became good friends. I'd been there a short time, and somebody said that there was a missionary in town. Okay, I didn't know who it was. Maybe they said CMA. I don't know if they said a CMA. I don't know if they knew that. So one day I had a day off, and I just decided to take a taxi downtown and then get off. And I got off in the middle of Woodhorn. I just started asking questions. You keep asking questions, you get answers. A missionary. And I keep asking them, point like that. And they kept pointing me, and I got in a sort of a large open area. And I looked around, I said, that must be the missionary house right there. I went right to the door. It was. The missionary's wife came to the door. I introduced myself, and she invited me in. Her name was Ruth. Ruth Perkins. Lovely CMA missionary wife. And John was out somewhere, out in the field someplace. So that's how I got to know Ruth and John Perkins. Now, the interesting thing about that is that Ruth Perkins was a sister of John Scobie. I think I got this right, okay? It's his memory, okay?
Okay.
And John Scobie was in thick with the Laternos.
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. Yeah. So when
Is that what landed you?
well, that really paved the path. And they knew Pop Laterno, and they knew Mom Laterno, and they knew the whole gang.
Too funny.
Yeah. Sort of paved the path.
That played a big role in.
Not a big role.
But it was part of it for
yeah,
sure.
it's part of it. Yeah.
That is too funny.
Well, you see, when you get 90 years old, you look back, you say, boy, the Lord must have been there. This is before I'm saved. Well, he was there. And you see his path or his contact all the way long, all the way through it. But you never know it. You're experiencing it.
Right. Did you grow up in church at all?
I was raised in a Lutheran church.
Okay.
The Lutheran church has one foot out of Catholicism and one foot in.
Right.
Okay, that's the best way to describe it. I went through the catechism, I went through the explanation of the catechism and all that. Didn't faze me. Now, some people it does, not me. The only thing I learned was God was hard. I didn't know he was approachable.
Right.
Never.
You learned the fear of God, learned to fear God, not the fear of God.
Well, and so I just lived a terrible life, so to speak. Yeah. So
Where were you at in your spiritual walk when you ended up in Vietnam?
Well, at 63, we came to the Lord, so this is 4 years later, so a relatively new Christian.
And that's why you sought out the missionary.
Yeah, because I was interested in all these fasts and so forth and so on, yeah.
Interesting.
But the dumb thing I did, I wanted to have something to do when I was over there. I got to back up. I got another story. I'm so full of stories. We found a church down the road when we moved to Maryland by chance, because I didn't know they were there. And I knew enough, because we were saved in June of 63, and by August of 63, with other contexts, I knew enough what to look for when I got to Maryland. So I got out on the road and started looking for a church. I came right to this thing. It's Allentown Baptist. What is it? It was a Baptist. It was the kind of Baptist that they said they'd find it. And there it was. You talk about the Lord leading. There it is, right there. And so we joined that, and I think in like January of 64 we were baptized there. Yeah. Interesting how that all
That is
worked
cool.
out. The Lord leads, and He just puts you in contact. And I look back at 90 years old and all the churches I've been in, and those were the best years of our life. Hands down.
Just tremendous amount of growth.
No, but the people and the camaraderie, the fellowship was just superb. I enjoyed everybody I met there, whatever station in life they were in. It was just a very good experience. We had some great experiences over here at LBT, but it was a different kind.
Right.
But nothing matched. It was a perfect situation for new Christians like ourselves to get into it. Absolutely perfect. And our children. Yeah. Best years. Yeah. And we had a pastor, retired Southern Baptist pastor, who had pastored close to the House of Representatives, or Capitol area.
Oh, okay.
Within a block or two or three of that area. He pastored there at that church, Southern Baptist Church, for years. And he retired. And somehow, someone got him to come and be interim pastor at Allentown Baptist. It was the best thing ever happened to us. Best thing ever happened to us. It couldn't have been a better thing. I would go Saturday mornings down there about 9 or 10 o'clock, and I'd sit in there for an hour or two talking with him, just talking about everything. Bible, this, that, everything. Just talking. Because, I'm 29, 30 years old. I'm just getting into this business. What's going on? You know. I never forgot. I asked him about going to seminary. He said, when I went off to seminary, he said, I asked the Lord to prevent me from picking up heresy. I was, what? That's what he said.
That's powerful.
That's powerful. I don't want to pick up any heresy when I go to seminary.
I mean, he's got the right idea.
Yeah. So
Wow.
It's
Man.
wonderful, wonderful.
Well, there's plenty of heresy being preached these days. Goodness.
Well, that's where it comes from. Almost all the heresy comes out of cemeteries.
Cemeteries.
Cemeteries. Cemeteries.
The slip of the tongue.
No, it's not a slip.
No, I know what you mean.
It's deliberate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that was the best, you say that was the best time of your life spiritually.
Well, for the family, for everybody.
Just period.
Oh, yeah.
Just for everybody.
The kids were saved there.
What year did you end up in Longview?
69.
Okay, so right after.
Well, I left Southeast Asia in 68, but the government in their wisdom wouldn't let me go. Well, I'd had if you spend 2 years in graduate school, you get you owe the government some years.
Right.
So I had to wrestle with that, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to spend another year, which was kind of an interesting year. I went to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, which is a test and evaluation place.
Yep.
This was fun. This is they were testing all kinds of new things down there. They needed a helicopter to fly them around to all stuff. It was great stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So we got a flight here, and we want you to fly over there and do this. All right, we'll do that. We had so we got a night flight. He usually didn't have night flights. Got a night flight. Okay. All right. A lot of things sticking up around Eglin Air Force Base. You don't want to get too low.
Right.
So I took off and got to a reasonable altitude, whatever it was. And they said, fly here, fly there. Finally, a guy came up. He says, you want to see what we're doing? Yeah. He said, put these things on. It was night vision. I said, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. Everything down there.
So this was early night vision.
Well, I guess, I don't know. I'd never seen it. I guess it existed. I don't know if it did or not.
That's wild.
I said, well, I could land down there, I think, right now. So they were doing a lot of strange stuff. They still do it. Eglin Air Force Base is test and evaluation, and they've been doing that. When when Jimmy Doolittle formed his B-25s, that's where they trained, at Eglin Air Force Base.
Believe it.
They trained right there. That was in 1942. So that base has been there a long time doing that same type of work.
Gosh. Yeah, no, that was very early night vision. That's prototype time frame for that stuff. That's crazy. Huh.
One other thing, when I got to Eglin Air Force Base, again, even at the Air Force Base, they didn't talk much. Well, there's some secret stuff going on there too,
Right.
So I went down to the ops area and went down to the flight line, and I see an H-21 there, and about 50 yards away, I said, what? It was SR-71.
Yep.
Just sitting not very far away from H-21. Okay.
Were you aware of it being a thing prior to seeing it right then and there?
No, I didn't know much about Eglin until I got there.
No, the SR.
Well,
the same-
I'd heard there was something. Yeah, there was
But
something.
you hadn't seen.
I'd heard there was a blackbird.
any-
There was a blackbird someplace. That I'd heard. Well, speaking of not seeing things or not, what should I say? Let me start over. It was, I would say, January 60, if I got the date right. Pretty close. Okay. Must be. I could have that date wrong. Anyway, we were flying at Ladd Air Force Base, and we got an alert. Scramble. Jet flamed out. Scramble. No. Well, when jets flame out, they don't glide very far.
No.
So we're out off the end of the runway doing this. Why are we still out here?
Yeah.
We didn't get called back. Oh, this is crazy, you know. So it was maybe 15 minutes. I don't know what the amount of time it was, but we were flying in circles out there off the end of the runway on the side. And Sonny said, looked up, he said, look at that thing. It's going to crash. It's going so slow. Oh, it's not crashing. It landed. Then we saw two men running on either side, grabbing the wing. Then we saw a big tarp coming over it.
Oh no.
That was the U-2.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where, oh, U-2. It flamed out over Umiat, was I don't know, 100 or 200 miles away. Probably flamed out at 60,000 feet or something like that. Glided all the way into Ladd. Okay, but nobody ever talked about it, even on the base.
Gosh.
We came in and we didn't say anything.
So everybody just kind of like look at each other like, yeah, you saw that too, right?
But nobody in the base ever talked about it.
That's
It was
crazy.
strange.
So Eglin, you probably, I mean, that was probably a pretty cool year just because you're seeing so much weird stuff.
Yeah.
So you never saw, well, according to what you said, most of your stuff was danger level 1.
Yeah.
You probably didn't have a hard time really assimilating back to normal life.
No problem.
'Cause, I mean,
No.
you're kind of an air courier for parcels and people for the most part, yeah?
Yeah, when I came back home, I just fit right in. I didn't have any syndrome at all. Nothing like that.
Because all the fire you took was friendly. Gosh.
But the poor grunts down there in Vietnam, oh, so terrible. Not only did they have to fight, and a lot of them knew that they were fighting a losing war, but they got somebody behind them with a gun, and you go out there and you fight or else. And then some things that are not well publicized, some of their commanders were fragged.
Yeah.
That means the grunts weren't going to do it. And I think some of the commanders might have been killed.
Goodness.
I can't prove that, but that's what I've heard. And it doesn't surprise me. And there was a lot of drugs in there.
Well,
A
yeah.
lot of drugs in there. People are high on drugs trying to fight a war.
Because Vietnam was, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit in Korea, but Vietnam was really the first war where American soldiers were doing pretty hard drugs.
It was bad.
Did you see the effects of that at all, or were you
No.
kind of insulated courtesy of the...
We just heard about it. We heard about it.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that was-
But that was a very well-known thing that was going on. How much of it, so you mentioned you're picking up a lot of Laotians, or any of them, Did you tell us-
They were all loyal, very loyal, no question about it. They were most of them were out of the Hmong tribe, and the Hmong tribe bitterly hated the communists. And they said 30% of the Hmong tribe were Christians. They said, which may have been true. But I sort of felt bad dropping these people off, and I figured they have a radio and they got a gun. What's going to end up with them? They probably got scarfed up somehow and killed. I don't think they ever got home. That's just
But that's just
because they
war.
were so far away from.
Right.
There
Nobody's
some,
coming in to get them.
Some of them might have walked home somehow.
Gosh.
I don't know. You felt like you were taking them to a place they probably would never return from, one way or the other.
So you weren't doing a bunch of search and rescue when something went wrong for one of them.
No. Now the search and rescue in Laos was done by the Jolly Green Giants,
Right.
and they flew helicopters like ours, but theirs were armored to the teeth. They had armor all over. They were ready to fight. And they had guns. They had all sorts of things. So when they went in to save a downed airman, they were coming in and they had Sandys above them, A1s, protecting them. They were spreading a lot of fire down in there anyway that was trying to get at them. So they had a lot of protection. We didn't have any protection. The most we had was maybe a hand gun.
I was gonna say y'all probably had a 1911 on you. That's about it.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. So we just were not prepared for that if we got into it.
Well, yeah, your only weapon was speed.
But
get in, get out.
My good buddy that I drove to Alaska with, he was a Jolly Green.
Oh yeah.
But he was there at a different time and different place, so we never saw each other. But he flew Jolly Greens.
Did you get to contact him at all after?
Some. So, yeah.
Did I assume his experience with the war and the after effects was significantly different than yours?
Yes, much so. He took a lot of fire. He went into these places picking people up. You know, he almost always getting shot at. But their helicopters were armored.
Yeah, they're set up.
They were set up for it. You know,
right.
They had a lot of protection.
But a hot LZ is a hot LZ.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So he went on to be a colonel, and then he retired at Albuquerque. And I think he ran the Albuquerque airport for a few years when he really retired.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Albuquerque. Yeah.
That's cool.
We visited him out there once or twice. He's a really good friend, a good guy, nice guy.
So, after the war, and I guess I didn't realize the time frame in which you became a Christian, so that's interesting. But you come back to the States, you do your time at England. After that, you come to Longview.
Well, okay, I can pick up the story right there.
Okay.
So as soon as I got back to England in the fall of '68, I made contact by letter, you know, didn't have all these modern conveniences, with Laterno College.
Oh, okay.
Laterno College. Said I was interested, and I had a date of separation day, a DOS, when I'd be available. And I said, I'm really interested in a faculty position there. I wish I'd kept that letter. I don't know where it is. And so they responded, and they sent me an application. So I filled out an application. I didn't know I was going to apply.
So they just mail you back an application?
It's all mail. It's all mail.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, 68.
That's how you'd have to do it.
So then I got the application. I didn't take long to fill it out, but I didn't know what to apply for. I have an undergraduate degree in engineering.
Right.
And I got this master's in statistics. And I don't know how I phrased the application. I said, experience in engineering, and maybe I was applying for engineering. I can't remember what I put down.
But somehow you ended up in statistics.
Well, I wouldn't apply for something in statistics. They don't have a statistics there at Laterno College.
Right.
They might just teach a smidgen of it.
Right.
So I don't remember what I put down. Well, anyway, as a result, I got a invitation for a campus visit. Maybe they were trying to figure me out. I don't know what it was. So the campus visit then was in February. You know, I'm saying in February. It could have been different, you know, with your memory. But I'm just going to say it was February. And so I got on campus, and I went to the headquarters area, whatever it was. Looked like a headquarters. Looked like somebody knew what they were doing. And I'm saying, well, so-and-so, oh yeah. Well, let us have so-and-so take you on a campus tour. So so-and-so got a hold of me. Starts walking across campus, and well, this is this building, and this is this building, and introduced me to what these buildings were. And we were waiting. I hadn't got a third of the way across campus. So someone came up from behind me someplace. Said, "Hey, I want to talk to him." "Hey, I'm looking for you. I want you." Man, it was a good word. Someone said they wanted me.
Right.
Wow. That was music to my ears.
Right.
Well, it turned out it was the head of the math department. He had seen my application, and he was waiting for me to come in because he wanted me. Phew. So he said, "My name's Ken Stevens. I'm Roger. Okay, come with me to my office." Just like that. He just took command of everything. So I walked over to his office. We sat down. We did a little small talk, and he said, "Well, I saw your statistics. I really like that, and so forth. I think you'll fit in here just fine, and I want to hire you." And we didn't spend much over 10 or 15 minutes in his office.
Wow.
Just because he
made his mind up.
He'd made up his mind.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
So I traipse along behind. He goes over to the academic dean, who hires and fires faculty.
Right.
So I traipse in there, and we get in the academic dean's office, and all the doors are now closed. 3 of us in there. And Ken Stevens, this guy that wanted me, said, "I want to hire this guy." And the other guys, the academic dean, he was Bob Stevens. So we had Stevens versus Stevens.
Oh,
Okay. Well, we've got enough. And I kind of drifted back to a corner.
Right. Let them fight
And
it
then
out.
they are arguing over whether they should hire me or not in my
With
presence.
you right there.
In my presence. And I'm over in a corner like sucking my thumb. And the persuasive fellow won, and it was Ken Stevens.
That's too funny.
It was a heated argument going on, but he won. So Bob Stevens kind of bit the bullet. "Well, I'm hiring another math professor. I don't know how many he hired that year anyway." He said, "Well, what are you going to pay?" So Bob Stevens pulled out an envelope or something. He put a number down. And I think he showed it to Steve, to Ken.
Yeah.
I looked, it was a big pay reduction. I said, "I'll take it." I took it. I said, "If I get my foot in the door, I'll stay."
Right.
And I got my foot in the door. That's a fact. I'm not
That is
embellishing that at all.
wild. That is so wild.
So he was a great guy to work for. He liked, but see, he had an ulterior motive. I found out later another reason why he wanted me.
Do tell.
So it takes time to figure this stuff out. In retrospect, you look back. So in March of '72,
Okay.
so he hired me in '69. He called me in the office. He says, "I'm leaving in 2 weeks." "She's leaving in 2 weeks? You can't do that." He says, "I'm assigning." He was teaching about 18 hours. I'm going to assign you this and this, this. You're going to take this, and so is going to take those courses and finish out the semester, and I'm gone. He did that.
That's abrupt.
But now, if you look back, he knew he was going to do that. He knew he was going to leave Letourneau. He was not going to be there forever.
Right.
And he wanted a statistician in
That
there.
could take it over.
Because he was a full-blown statistician. He knew statistics inside and out. He had his PhD in statistics. So he wanted to leave behind
Right.
someone in the math department that knew statistics, and he did it. But I didn't know that at the time.
You think Bob knew? I bet Bob knew. But also, to his credit, getting that ball rolling 3 years in advance wasn't the worst thing he could have done.
Well, you see, the reason he was going that way, he graduated from Rutgers, and some people up in Rutgers had their finger in the pie in United Nations work around the world, and going to the UN and spending a few months or a year with some of these less developed countries and teaching them statistics.
Right.
So Ken already had his fill of some of that stuff. He had done it. So he knew that he could spend 20 years. It's a really plush job, good money,
Yeah.
good retirement, the whole thing. he decided then at that time that he was going to put a 20-year increment in. I can see it all in insight. Good job, good retirement, the whole thing.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Gosh.
Nice guy. Ken was a nice guy.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That is so funny.
So we had a time here a few years ago when Ken, before he passed away, was on campus. And I was on campus. And the guy that I had replace me, it's sort of an apostolic succession from Stevens to Erickson to the guy Rose.
Okay.
We got a picture side by side.
Oh,
The
that's
apostolic
awesome.
Succession.
That's awesome.
We got all three of us together.
What year was Laterno founded?
46.
Oh, wow.
46.
So it wasn't some massive establishment when you showed up. It hadn't been around that long.
Well, it was an Army hospital
Oh.
built in 42.
Huh.
Fast. It went up fast.
Huh.
By end of 42 or 43, they were taking in jungle rot, all kinds of hospital issues. It was a hospital place.
Interesting.
Plus, they had German prisoners there. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. So it was a big facility. It was built on a quarter section, 160 acres, and they used a lot of it for that facility.
So Laterno just bought it out when it was done being
No.
used for the war?
No. Pop Laterno was over in Vicksburg. He was always moving around to someplace better. And he was invited by, I think if my story is straight, by Carl Estes, who was a wheeler dealer in Longview, Texas, with big connections in Washington, D.C. Okay? No doubt about it. This was a guy, Estes.
Is that Estes that you see on the sides of trucks, or is this a different Estes?
Could be a different one, I know.
Huh. Okay, I'll have to look at that later.
No. So, as I understand it, he knew that Pop Laterno was over at Vicksburg, and somehow I think he knew that Pop Laterno would like to have some bigger place. I don't know if Estes initiated the contact or Pop Laterno initiated contact. Anyway, the contact was made. So Estes persuaded Mom and Pop Laterno to come to Longview. This would have been in probably late 45, I would guess. It could have been early 46. And Estes was, hey, I like to, I'm a city chamber of commerce. We like to have new industry come in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, So he's trying to get Pop to come over here. And Pop is open to it for some reason. I can't remember what that reason was. So they get up in the airplane, they're flying around, and they see this deserted place.
Which hasn't been deserted that long
Not
at that
long,
point.
not that long.
Still fresh.
Not that long. And I think someone broached the subject, well, I'd like to start a school. But Mom had this in the back of her mind for a while. Well, do you want that place? Estes said. Well, I guess so. Well, I can get it for you. Really? Yes. I can get it for you. Now, I don't know if I have these stories exactly correct, but this is the general gist of it, okay?
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, we'll start a school for GIs, these people. So the next thing you know, was it February of 46? They got it for $1.
It had to sell for something because it was government property.
$1. And Carl Estes had connections in Washington, D.C., and he got that thing for them.
That's perfect.
That's what it was called. What was it called before that? I can't remember. Can't remember the name of it. It just missed me for a little bit.
How many of the buildings are original then?
The only original building left, and it's been gussied up a lot, is Spear Chapel.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
it's a historic site. All the other buildings have been destroyed or hit. Somehow they've been demoed. Then you wouldn't want them anyway.
Were most of them demoed by the time you showed up, or
No,
No.
no,
Oh,
no.
so they were still using some of it.
A lot of barracks were available. A lot of them were available and being used. Yeah.
Just as dormitories, essentially.
Dormitories, yes.
Yeah.
Classrooms.
Huh.
Other things. Oh, yeah.
Most of them.
And the barracks were all interconnected by a covered hallway.
Okay.
You could go any barracks you want to without walking outside, going through all these hallways.
Kind of convenient.
Yeah, it's kind of convenient.
So, you get back to the States, you start this new job. Being in Longview, you're kind of, in a way, isolated from a lot of the big city stuff. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've got a unique perspective having now lived 90 years and most of it as a Christian. How do you view this country today versus when you went to fight? Because, I mean, you went in more to use it as a stepping stone, it sounds like.
Well, into the Air Force, you mean? Or-
Yeah.
Oh, the country has changed
Fight.
so
Yeah.
so dramatically and so quickly.
What was, if you had to...
When I was a kid, first and second grade, some people were still plowing with horses, farming with horses. It was going out, but I saw people farming with horses when I was in first and second grade.
Oh my gosh.
It was on its way out, but I saw it.
John Deere was still making plows.
Oh yeah.
Goodness.
So, yeah, as you see,
Gosh. And yet you've managed to live through the last 30 years of...
well,
That's the crazy thing. The last 30 years of your life have just been
yeah.
wild.
You got to remember that our country lost its innocency, probably a crude way of putting it, with the assassination of JFK.
Of course, yeah.
That was the turning point where something bad was going on, and it's gotten worse year by year by year by year. No question about it.
Because you think about, of course, Lincoln. I mean, he was assassinated, but you're right. The true loss of innocence had to be JFK, because maybe because that was the first time it was a televised thing that you could see.
It's the first time they got away with murder.
Well, yeah, the government got away with it.
got away with murder.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because James Files, who was a guy that blew Kennedy's head off.
Yeah.
You met him. You saw him.
Oh yeah.
Okay. He was working for the mob and for the CIA simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the CIA had higher priority than the mob, but he worked for both.
Yeah. I remember. It hasn't been long.
Now, what happened in that assassination, the CIA was getting cold feet, but the mob did not have cold feet, and the mob did it.
Right. Because
But
the CIA called it off at the last second.
They were trying to call it off, but they couldn't do it.
Yeah, too late.
Sam Giancana and Accardo above him said, "No, it's an on. It's on." And that's why it happened.
So that's the loss of innocence moment. What's the next moment that you think, if you had to point to it and you say, this is a downturn point?
Well, I would say 9/11 was not exactly what you think it was. 9/11 was contrived. It just so happened on the day of 9/11, all the military had a exercise, which was similar to the real thing that was going on.
Right.
That was not an accident.
Yeah.
That's not an accident. Too many things like that going on. They said an airplane hit the Pentagon. It was a missile.
Yep.
It's bad. And they get away with it. And they get away with it. They get away with Ruby Ridge. They get away with it at Waco with Koresh. They get away with it in Oklahoma City.
Yep.
Because the media will back them on whatever they say. All that was going on. So you see, all you see is authentication of what you think you already know is going on.
Right.
By the way, Colonel or General Ben Parton, who was he and his wife that make sure that Shar found the Lord, pretty close connection. He knew TWA 800, that one, shot down by friendly fire.
Believe it.
Yeah. But nobody will admit it.
Gosh.
Yeah. Ben Parton even named the type of oddball missile or whatever they used to do it. It was something that was not well understood in the armaments.
So you think JFK and then 9/11? You don't think there's anything in the means? Well, obviously Ruby Ridge, Waco. We can go down that rabbit hole, but you don't think there was another event between the two?
Well, the RFK was a joke. That assassination, that was
Right.
a joke.
Right.
RFK knows a lot more about that assassination and more about his uncles
Yeah.
than he lets on.
Yeah. There's no way he doesn't know.
RFK likes to get to the truth, and I'm sure he's at the same truth I'm at.
What's wild is that he is knowing what he knows and knowing he knows what danger he's put himself in.
Of course, he's dedicated.
Being as public as he is, and he's still going for it.
He is so dedicated to this health issue. He's putting his life on the line.
Yeah.
This health issue, and I don't agree with everything on a health issue, but more power to him if he can bring this to light.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because everybody wants to make everything a crisis, but if you just walk around on a city street these days, you look at people and you just go, people can't live like this.
I have to go back to 9/11.
Okay.
What was it? What happened after that? The warmongers got in and persuaded Bush to go over there and get into trouble.
Yep. Weapons of mass destruction here, weapons of mass destruction there.
Well, the interesting thing about that weapons of mass destruction, it was true.
Oh yeah.
I've got a book,
I'm sure.
but it was not the weapons of mass destruction thing.
Yeah.
Here, 2 weeks before they hit Saddam over there, I've got a book somewhere of someone who was in Saddam's Air Force. And he says that about 2 weeks before they got him, when the war started or whatever it was, that they had land vehicles and airplanes taking all that stuff out to Syria. Because you ever wonder where Syria got all this stuff? That's where it came from. Duh! Just connect the dots. Syria didn't just generate themselves. They got all that stuff that Saddam moved out. And then Syrians started using it.
Yeah.
People don't connect the dots where they got it.
Totally makes sense. Gosh. But yeah, we're just playing terrorist whack-a-mole for 20 years. It's wild. Absolutely wild.
But you see, the warmongers had penetrated both parties.
Right. Well, that's very obvious.
Now, I'll tell you what I think happened recently. I can't prove it, okay? In early 22, maybe January, approximately somewhere in there was a rapprochement between the Vatican and the Orthodox. They hadn't talked to each other 1,000 years.
That's
Now,
a big deal.
something was going on in that rapprochement about something. They just weren't having tea, and there were some important things that were agreed to. I think the important things that were agreed to were what eventually turned out to be Ukraine. I think they're talking because Ukraine in the east is pretty much Orthodox. In the west, it's pretty much Catholic. In the middle, it's kind of a mixture of stuff like that. They surely were talking about that. They were surely had some sense that a war was coming. Surely they do. I could be wrong. Okay.
But it makes too much sense.
It just they haven't met for 1,000 years, and here they're meant to meet about something, and then war's going to break out.
Yep.
So as I understand it, that 3 days before the war commenced, Kamala Harris was visiting with Zelensky. Duh. Kamala Harris was also visiting with NATO, maybe 3 days in that time frame before the war starts. What is Kamala Harris doing over there visiting with those people just before the war breaks out? It sounds like she was sending him Sikkim. Warmongers. Biden. She was not telling him, don't fight.
Yeah. There's no way.
If the United States of America was telling him not to fight, he probably wouldn't fight. He would just give up.
Yeah.
He must have known that he would get supported.
Yeah.
Or promise of support.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Biden supports him, but he always comes in late with the stuff. He doesn't come in at the beginning. He just barely gets in time to help out. That's the way that war has been fought. He comes in late with all the stuff. Now, what's he doing when he's going out of office? He's getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
Now he's giving them weapons that he would never give them before.
Yep.
This is crookedness.
So, obviously, the results of the 2020 election were fraudulent.
Oh, no doubt about it.
So, definitely more so than the 2020 election, this most recent election was viewed in real time by a lot of people that were bound and determined not to let that happen again.
Well, there was cheating, but
there's always cheating.
But they couldn't do it on a wholesale level.
Yes, but a lot of people on both sides, they look at that and they say, well, the jumps when they counted, I guess they said they dumped all of the mail-in ballots.
Well, not all the mail-in ballots are for Biden.
Right. But of
be,
course, a lot of them would be. I would bet. But that's their excuse.
I know.
But it is awfully convenient that it just goes.
But it happened in more than one state.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wisconsin was just the most obvious. But Wisconsin's had corruption issues for decades.
Let me give you another story. A little off topic here, but
go ahead.
In 2019 or 2018, Fauci's the director of NIH and all this other alphabet soup stuff. He has a lady working for him, and they're always trying to do new things. And this lady figured out this new virus. Oh. But she didn't get credit for it. He took it, the patent on it. Okay? It's a snake in the grass. So he's got the patent on it. Well, you get the patent on it. These people always want to figure out, well, what if you do this, or what if you do that? What if you do something else? It's called gain of function.
Right.
So he's doing gain of function on this stuff now. But then he realizes it's not legal in this country to do that.
And that's why they moved the lab.
So he got millions of dollars out of whatever his department was in, millions of dollars. And he sent the money to Wuhan. He sent this to Wuhan to do the gain of function.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, somehow it got loose, or whether it was on purpose or accident doesn't make any difference. It's all over the world. And that's what caused the election to be fraudulent because you got into the COVID area and
Yeah.
they did all this stuff under
Oh yeah.
cover of COVID, and that's how Trump lost.
Yep.
Fauci was an instigator of it. He's a rascal.
He should be in prison for the rest of his life.
Well, then all the lies he gave on TV.
Oh
he
yeah.
flip flop on this and
Oh,
flip flop
yeah.
on that.
No, you can't. Why would you wear masks? Everybody needs to wear masks.
But Fauci is also on record about the time when they figured this virus out, or maybe before, I don't know. He predicted there would be a virus in 1 or 2 years. It's on record. They go back and let AI dig those records out, and Fauci's on record predicting it. A rascal.
There were people, though, calling him out as corrupt and whatnot, even before COVID. That's what's crazy. It's not exactly news that he's in bed with the wrong people. And yet here we are.
So little things in history have big reactions.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. That's enough of Fauci.
If Roger Ericstad were 24, 28, whatever years old today, if you were my age, and we've got the war going on, you know, let's say that you're my age today with the level of corruption we have in our government today, and we had another 9/11 happen, and they send you out to, you know, they send troops out to wherever. Are you going?
Well, you know, sometimes between the devil and deep blue fish, and some of those things I can't possibly think of all the scenarios. No, you as a Christian, you've got to obey. You know, unless it crosses God, immoral.
Exactly.
You really have to obey certain line of things. You can't. That would be an unchristian thing to do. I don't know where you're going with all that.
No, I'm just curious.
Some Christians get radical out of the box. You know, they can't do that sort of stuff.
Right.
They go a little too far.
So unless you knew it was immoral, even knowing that probably the government's in bed with the wrong people, if you get orders to go somewhere, you're going.
Well, it's a fine line. It's between you and the Lord.
Right.
On those things. It's an individual decision because I can't foresee all the possibilities that might happen. But you have to obey God rather than man when it gets to that point. I never had that in my life. I never perceived that in my life.
You never had a time when you were in the war that you perceived it to be an immoral situation you were being put in.
Well, I knew it was wrong. At least I thought it was anyway. I never perceived it in that light. I just thought, well, I'll just go put my time in to get out, and that's that. Conscientious objectors, some of that, I understand where they're coming from. I don't know what else to say. I can't. There's too many variables.
Well, of course, there's always a lot of variables.
Too many variables.
I've just thought about it a lot recently. Now, don't mind that. Sitting where I'm at right now.
Well, but here's the thing. Generally, if you're married, you have a wife and your children, you're the last ones to go.
Of course, of course.
They don't mess with you.
But I've thought, well, if I were not in that position.
But then if there's going to be a draft, they'll go for the 18, 19-year-olds first.
Right.
And then there'll be a while before they get down to 25, 26-year-old people are married.
Yeah.
Because they go for those young people.
Of course.
Some 17-year-olds claim they're 18 and 18
They're going
and
to be
19.
the easiest to teach.
Pardon?
They're going to be the easiest to teach or brainwash,
Well,
whichever you want.
they're also the most physically able.
Right.
But the problem in America, there's so much obesity and so much other problems that you take the 19-year-olds in America I bet you 80% would fail a physical.
I'd bet you it's more than that.
It's awful.
And
That means your best people, the healthiest people, are the ones that get killed.
yeah.
And the other ones that aren't healthy, they ride the gravy train and never go in.
Yep.
It's not fair.
And that, I guess, is kind of what I was hoping to lead to, is we're at such just a rotten point. For people my age and a bit younger and a bit older than me, frankly, this isn't just millennials, but spiritually, physically, especially the younger people, emotionally, everybody is just bankrupt. I mean, and it's all connected.
You talk about
Just
economically bankrupt?
no,
physically,
I mean
spiritually
physically. Forget economically,
Okay.
because
Okay.
people my age and younger do love to complain. Oh my gosh, my parents had it easier, and I think it's really easy to sit there and armchair quarterback that.
It's more or less true. Okay.
And there are certain ways, like $1 just doesn't go that far these days.
For sure.
But if you want to make it, you'll make it. You'll always find a way outside of some act of God. But people my age, and I see it every day because it's bad in Dallas, they're just in such bad shape. And again, physically and spiritually, I think to a certain degree are linked. And it does concern me when I look around at people my age, like, where are we going?
But look, you know the Lord. Okay?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So you got that.
Yeah.
Think of all these people that don't know the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they have nothing to hang on to.
Exactly. That's
Nothing.
my point. Yeah.
So being a Christian, you say, thank God, I'm
Oh, yeah.
on your side.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not worried about me,
I
but
know.
it does make you concerned for the future of the country when you
Oh,
look
yeah.
and see that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, because I look at photos of, like, I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about your high school and your college class. Probably very small classes by modern standards, right? Your graduating class was probably tiny. But I'll bet you if you look in your yearbook, it's a bunch of very healthy young people.
Yeah,
Probably.
Yeah.
You look at a yearbook these days, people are in rough shape, man.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah, all you can do is thank God for the good that you have in your life.
every day that you're alive and the Lord loves you and your wife is saved and you're taking Christopher, that's the greatest blessing of all. That's everything. And,
For sure.
But do you realize that 95% of the people you meet are lost?
Oh, yeah.
95%.
At least.
95%. 95%.
What would you say?
Well, there are
though-
pockets where that's different, but
Right.
but in general.
Well, and I would say in my life, I meet more than that on average.
Yeah, and it's the nice thing you know as a Christian, though, you can't save the world. You can do what you can in your own arena. You're on the Lord's side. He's coming back soon.
Yeah.
Just let her rip. Just let her rip. Just okay. Take me out, Lord. That's the way it is.
So you fed right into my closing question, which is one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and I don't know references, but no man knoweth the time, right?
No.
But if you had to guess, because you've gotten to watch just some crazy
You're
progressions.
talking about Lord's return?
Yes.
I'll give it to you. The Lord works in thousands of years. He had 4,000 years to the time of Christ. There's a lot of prophecy that indicates there are another 2,000 years, which we've had. And it looks like we're kind of overboard on that. But maybe the Lord doesn't count when Jesus was on earth. He may not even count that.
So that puts us to 2033.
So, and we're going to be raptured out for sure before the tribulation starts. So, based on all those things, I would say 27 would be the outside boundary on the rapture. 27.
Really?
Yeah.
3 more years.
Yeah. September. I
Huh.
would say September 27th.
Okay.
That's just the way I see prophecy unfolding. It could be sooner. There are a lot of people have done a lot of work on this, and I've looked at it, and they all start narrowing in about the same place.
Well, because
There are different people looking at it from different angles, but they're getting into this gap. It's pretty close.
that's kind of what I had come up with.
Yeah.
Not exactly 2027, but somewhere in the next.
Well,
Decade.
tribulation will last about 7 years. If a tribulation is just 30 days, then it might last less than that. But I don't know. The Lord usually accommodates our year with his 30-day year. Somehow he does that anyway. I don't know where I was going with that thought. It's going to be 7 years long, so it starts in 27 and ends in 34. And 34, I think that's the maximum length it'll go. 33 or 34. I have a fellow wrote a book. He says 33, and I said he forgot to count when you go from BC to AD.
Right. You lose a year.
There's a year in there.
That makes sense.
There's a year missing.
Makes
So
sense.
you got to count that. You got to count that. There is no year zero. Some people, when they're doing prophecy work, don't realize that, so they get bottled up in 1 year. So it might be 34 then before that.
Wow.
But it's coming. It can't be very far away. Look at all the stuff that's happening so fast that people can hardly keep up to it.
Yeah.
Look,
It's wild.
this little AI thing is going on. And what after that? There's going to be some advanced AI. There's going to be something else. And you got Elon Musk. I'm going to go to Mars. That's his dream. Go to Mars. Hey, this ain't for the children of men. I'm sorry, Musk. You're intruding in God's.
Yeah.
There are so many things that are happening so fast, and the woke crowd and the people who lie and know they are lying and they live in their lies by the millions.
So
It's so satanic.
I was surprised that the election went the way it did, because for one, they stole it so effortlessly 4 years ago. But two, I think it's easy to read Revelation and think things are just going to keep devolving for the next however many years we have left. But then out of nowhere, he wins again.
Well, they didn't have the cloak of the COVID, which was the big thing they wanted.
For sure.
And that made a lot of it. Number two, the Trump people took a lot of safeguards.
Yeah.
A lot of safeguards. And they did a lot more on the ground, person to person,
Yeah.
campaigning.
Oh, yeah.
They'd never done that before.
Yeah.
And they were pro-Trump people.
Yeah.
I saw the trend about 3 weeks before the election. I was following some gurus and so forth, and they said the trend is for Trump. I called it a landslide at the time. That was 3 weeks before. You can talk to anybody around here. I said it's going to be a landslide. I said that 3 weeks ahead of time.
Well, I was in Pennsylvania 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so it was going north up to Rhode Island, and I crossed into Pennsylvania, and there was Trump flags and Trump signs everywhere. And it was nuts. I remember I rolled through Gettysburg, went to go see that a little bit, and for the next hour headed out towards New Jersey and whatnot. Just signs and flags everywhere. I mean, put us to shame here in Texas. Trump.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When you see that, you know something's brewing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I went back the week prior to the election. And this time instead I went to Philly. And it was wild because throughout all of Pennsylvania until I got to Philly, just Trump everywhere. And then in Philadelphia, there's literally in the medians, not more than 5 feet between them, there were Kamala signs, and I was like, okay. But I did kind of take solace in the fact that I'd just gone through hundreds of miles of the opposite. But I still was surprised that he won by the margin he won by.
They worked hard. They worked hard.
Oh, they did. For
They
sure.
worked hard in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And another thing they did was there are a lot of Republicans that just don't bother voting. They went after that crowd big time. If you're a Republican, you got to get out and vote. And they by the thousands.
And still only 45% of Christians voted, maybe
Yeah,
something like that. No, I mean that's the.
Yeah.
I mean that's about where's about the statistics are.
Yeah.
Because you got a lot of conscientious objectors.
Yeah, whatever.
But yeah, it does feel like, well, at least for another 4 years, we've got a lease on life, in a way.
I think the next 4 years, but here's what Kirk told me or said to me about 2 or 3 years ago. He says, yeah, this was long before all these things had happened. He says, Trump's going to get elected and then the man of sin is going to show up. I said, you may be right. That's what Kirk said. He said, I think Trump's, and this is 2 or 3 years ago. He said, I said, well, yeah, maybe Trump will get elected, yeah, but I tend to think that he's more right than wrong.
Yeah.
You know the man of sin that shows up, it's going to be sneaky. We're going to be out of here, but the Trump administration could coalesce or be aligned with him to some extent. Because this man of sin is a smooth talker.
Yeah.
Smooth talker. And let's say that Trump brings peace to the Middle East. Let's say he brings peace to Russia and Ukraine. Boy, he's a peace man. If some other guy comes along that's like a world peace man, and it gets on the same frequency with Trump.
Just ride the coattails.
Yeah, I'm just laying out a scenario.
No, the thought has occurred to me too.
There's a scenario.
But I feel like whoever that is will be more aligned to the left, right? I mean, that's...
Well, he'll try to align with everybody.
Right.
This man of sin is going to be a smoothie. Man, will he be smooth.
Makes you glad you won't be here for it.
I ain't going to be here. No, I ain't going to be here.
Gosh. Well, there we go.
So the world that I grew up in and where I'm living in now is just two different worlds.
Yeah, there's a meme that's been going around a couple years now. It was definitely created by somebody my age. And it's a picture of a little girl. She's, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 years old. And she's standing in the foreground and you can see the skyline with the Twin Towers behind her. It just says, the world you grew up in is long gone.
Yeah. I mean, I digress, I've never thought. Do you know, a lot of people are afraid of nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't going to happen. Do you know why it ain't going to happen?
Because on the scale that a nuclear war would happen, it would void what's supposedly, what will happen in Revelation.
You got it.
That's why I'm not scared of it.
It's not going to happen
It's
because
not, yeah.
God's going to destroy all the stuff in the tribulation.
Yeah, there'd be nothing left to destroy.
So there's nothing. So God's going to have the pleasure of destroying all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be a nuclear war.
Yeah, at least not mass scale. And I feel like any nuclear war that started would turn mass scale very quickly. Yeah. And that's why people, oh my gosh, nukes. And I'm just sitting, I'm like,
No.
Now, that being said, I think a lot of what happens in Revelation is centered here in the States.
Well, we see the United States has to be in the book of Revelation someplace. Why do I say that? We are a world power. We have been a world power now for a century.
Right.
God does not overlook world powers for a
Right.
century.
Right.
It's in there.
Well, especially with as much effect as we've had over the world.
So we're in Daniel's fourth composite beast. That's the United States right there. That we're that. We're bad. We like to think of ourselves as good, but we are not good.
Well, and that's what kind of concerns me when I read Revelation is like I don't, regardless of where you think the United States fits in, I don't see a place where we would fit in as
chapter
a good
13
place.
you'll find chapter.
No, I mean I don't see a good place that we fit in.
Oh yeah.
I see us being a power of evil, not a power for good. That's that's my concern.
Yeah.
But again, we'll be gone.
We like to think of ourselves as good, and
World
the
police.
interesting thing, before the election, me and the Lord talked together a lot. I always get back and I said, Lord, I know there are 7,000 people in this United States that have not bowed their knee to Baal. Are we worth saving? I guess he thought so.
Yeah.
I guess he thought so.
Yeah.
Are we still on TV?
I mean,
we
can't be.
No,
it's interesting stuff, right? Like, no, I had a similar thought. It's like, what here is left worth not,
The thing about the book of Revelation, I've written a paper on that. There are 4 sweeps through the book of Revelation. Each sweep ends with some finality.
Okay.
It's really there, and I could probably print you out a copy of it.
Okay.
But from chapters 5 through 19, the one on seals would be one. The one on trumpets would be one, and the vials. Those things are sweeps pretty much through the last half of the tribulation, which is the violent. When the first half is sort of benign, the second half is really violent.
Right.
So I got 4 sweeps, and when you read it that way, you say, and it helps me to understand what's going on. It's not linear.
Right.
Revelation is not linear completely.